Let me be absolutely clear from the outset. What we are witnessing right now is not a trade dispute. It is not a temporary spat. What we are living through is the collapse of a global trade order that Washington assumed it would dominate forever. China did not hesitate. It did not blink. It pivoted. And what Beijing is offering Canada at this very moment is not simply an expansion of trade. It is a realignment of economic gravity across the Western Hemisphere. For months, tensions have been escalating across the Pacific. The United States attempted to impose its will on global trade through tariff threats, believing once again that fear would produce obedience. But instead of submission, Beijing accelerated partnerships with every country Washington tried to intimidate. The prevailing assumption among Western analysts was almost comical in its arrogance. We were told China would buckle within weeks, that its export model would collapse, that Beijing would come begging for relief. Every one of those assumptions was catastrophically wrong. On November 2, 2025, in Beijing, China's ambassador to Canada stood before the international media and asked a question that sent shockwaves through Ottawa. It was a very simple question. If two countries already trade competitively, why shouldn't we triple that trade? Now let me translate that sentence into plain geopolitical language. What China was saying without bluster, without insults, was this: the era of American economic dominance is over, and everything that followed confirmed it. China demonstrated something Washington has entirely forgotten: that patience defeats arrogance, that strategy outlasts threats, and that power belongs not to those who shout the loudest, but to those who plan the longest. Canada, almost by accident, has now become the most strategically valuable trading partner in North America. Look at the numbers, because they tell a story no press secretary can spin. Chinese exports to the United States are down 27%. Exports to the European Union are up 14%. Exports across Asia have surged by 16%. This is not a market correction. This is not chance. This is a deliberate, calculated disengagement from the American market. China is playing a long, multi-dimensional game while Washington struggles to remember the rules. And to understand how we arrived here, I need to take you back to January 2025. Donald Trump returns to the Oval Office and immediately declares economic war on China. Tariffs are raised to absurd levels, at points exceeding 100%. In Washington, the expectation was panic. What they got instead was silence. Beijing did not rage, it did not threaten. It did not perform theatrics on social media. It simply rerouted supply chains. Every shipping container that once sailed toward Los Angeles began heading elsewhere. Rotterdam, Singapore, Vancouver. Trade did not stop. It moved. And then came the absurdity. Trump announces victory. He boasts of a fantastic deal after quietly slashing tariffs from 100% to 47% because China made it clear it would cut off access to critical minerals that would shut down American manufacturing in a matter of weeks. Let me spell this out. A crisis was manufactured. It was worsened. It was partially undone. And then it was branded as genius. That is not negotiation. That is economic self-harm disguised as bravado. Meanwhile, the structural reality inside the United States deteriorated at breathtaking speed. By October 2025, American national debt hit $38 trillion. Not 37, 38. $1 trillion added in just 3 months. That is not governance. That is a free fall. And what was the response? Tariff everyone. Tax imports, shake allies down for revenue while insulting them publicly. There is one fatal flaw in that approach. When you treat every partner with contempt, they do not bargain with you. They exit. By 2025, the world learned a simple lesson: do not engage with American tantrums. Smile politely, wait them out, and build alternative trade systems that function perfectly well without Washington. It is the geopolitical equivalent of letting an angry toddler scream in the corner while the adults conduct business elsewhere, and this is where we arrive at the truly brilliant move. China did not merely pivot away from the United States. It targeted America's most deeply integrated trading partner, Canada. And it did so with an offer Ottawa cannot ignore. The Trans Mountain Pipeline came online in 2024, capable of moving 850,000 barrels of oil per day. Almost immediately, China became its #1 customer, not gradually, not symbolically, immediately. And once you see that graph, it tells you everything you need to know. For nearly a decade, China imported virtually no oil from Canada. Zero. Then the Trans Mountain Pipeline opens, and suddenly that line on the chart begins to rise steadily, decisively, while the line representing American purchases collapses. This is not coincidence, It is not convenience. China is not buying Canadian oil because it happens to be available. It is buying Canadian oil instead of American oil. Deliberately, strategically. This is economic signaling at its most sophisticated. The message to Washington could not be clearer. You want a trade war? Fine. We will spend our money elsewhere. We will reward your neighbors. And oil is only the beginning. China's ambassador went on Canadian television and stated calmly, without theatrics, that Beijing is prepared to triple trade with Canada. Not double. Triple. Pause for a moment and grasp the scale of that offer. China's economy is roughly 10 times the size of Canada's. It is the manufacturing engine of the world. When a system of that magnitude offers to make you its primary partner, it is not a gesture, it is a structural shift. And look at the timing. This offer arrives precisely as Washington is actively attempting to undermine Canadian industry. Trump tells Canada, we don't need your cars, we don't need your milk. He even jokes about annexation, about Canada becoming the 51st state. That is not alliance management, that is coercion. China, by contrast, approaches Ottawa and says, we will take what America rejects, and we will pay properly for it. Prime Minister Mark Carney meets with Xi Jinping at the Asia Summit. He then meets with China's ambassador. And Ottawa signals something important. They say they are ready to tackle irritants in the Canada-China relationship. Let me translate that diplomatic language for you. It means, we are open for business. Carney announces a plan to double non-American exports over the next decade. Beijing responds, politely but firmly. Why stop at double? Let's triple it. And this is not a hypothetical future. This is unfolding right now. While American politicians argue over whether Canada is somehow a security threat, China is constructing the economic relationship that will shape North America's future for decades. But here is the complexity, and it matters. Canada's auto industry is deeply integrated with the United States. You cannot simply open the floodgates to Chinese electric vehicles without consequences. This requires negotiation, strategy, and vision. Perhaps it means allowing Chinese EVs into Canada in exchange for manufacturing plants built on Canadian soil. Perhaps it means sourcing Canadian lithium, nickel, and cobalt for batteries. Perhaps it means constructing a supply chain that anchors high-value jobs in Canada while giving China access to North American markets. This is not ideology. This is industrial strategy. And this negotiation will determine whether Canada exits the Trump era stronger and more autonomous, or weaker and more dependent. Because let us be honest, Trump's America is not hiding its intentions. It wants Canada compliant, dependent, grateful for whatever access Washington permits. Economic sovereignty is not tolerated. It is punished. China is offering the opposite: partnership, reciprocity, respect, and scale. The contrast is almost theatrical. On one side, you have Donald Trump raging on social media, threatening allies, adding $1 trillion of debt every 3 months, and expressing confusion as the world turns away. On the other, you have Xi Jinping saying almost nothing publicly. No insults, no ultimatums, just quietly redirecting the world's second-largest economy toward every country America alienates. One strategy is chaos and spectacle. The other is patience and precision. And the outcomes are undeniable. Chinese exports to the United States are collapsing. Chinese exports to the rest of the world are accelerating. Canada is receiving offers that would have been unthinkable 5 years ago. The global trade order is not merely shifting, it is being rebuilt from the ground up. And the United States is being systematically excluded from its architecture. Not because countries hate America, but because you cannot build complex economic systems with someone who treats every negotiation like a schoolyard brawl. And here is what I find most fascinating of all. None of this required military force. No invasions, no coups, no dramatic speeches. China simply rerouted ships, signed contracts, and extended polite invitations to countries being shouted at by Washington. That is the entire strategy, and it is working spectacularly, because Trump fundamentally misunderstands modern economics. You cannot bully your way to prosperity in a world where alternatives exist. And China has just become the alternative for everyone. So Canada now faces a choice. And once you strip away the sentimentality and the fear, it is a remarkably clear one. Remain reflexively loyal to an ally that labels you a security threat. An ally that casually jokes about absorbing you as a 51st state. An ally that threatens your industries, insults your leaders, and treats cooperation as weakness. Or explore partnership with a country offering to triple your trade. A country already buying your oil? A country willing quietly, methodically, to negotiate agreements that are mutually beneficial rather than coercive. When laid out honestly, this is not a difficult decision. The real question keeping Ottawa awake at night is a different one. Can Canada pursue diversification toward China without detonating its relationship with the United States? Can it reduce dependency without provoking retaliation? Perhaps. But doing so requires something rare in today's geopolitical environment. It requires discipline, strategic patience, professional diplomacy. It requires being everything Donald Trump is not. And therein lies Canada's advantage. While Washington flails, breaking alliances, issuing threats, mistaking volume for strength, Canada can position itself as the opposite. Calm, reliable, serious, a country that negotiates instead of intimidates, a country that keeps its word. In a world where the former hegemon is experiencing a very public collapse in judgment, stability becomes power. China understands this perfectly. That is why these offers are being made now. Not earlier. Not later. Now. Beijing knows Ottawa is searching for options. It knows Trump has pushed Canada to the edge. It knows that decades of automatic alignment with Washington are no longer guaranteed. And it has stepped forward at precisely the right moment with precisely the right proposal. That is not coincidence. That is strategy. So here is what happens next. Either Canada seizes this opportunity, building serious diversified trade relationships that render American threats ineffective, or it hesitates, clinging to hope that Washington will eventually return to sanity, while opportunity after opportunity sails elsewhere. One path leads to sovereignty. The other leads to permanent subservience. And make no mistake, the world is watching this decision. If Canada demonstrates that it is possible to rebalance away from American economic domination, others will follow. Australia, Japan, South Korea. Every US ally currently navigating Trump's chaos is looking for proof that alternatives exist. Canada could become that proof. It could be the example that finally breaks the myth of inevitable American economic dominance. Or it could become a cautionary tale of a nation that recognized the moment, understood the stakes, and still chose fear. The offer is real. China wants to triple trade with Canada. They are already buying Canadian oil. They are ready to negotiate everything else. The door is open. So the only question that matters now is this: does Canada have the courage to walk through it? And let me ask you directly, because this moment is bigger than Ottawa alone. If Canada doesn't take this chance, who will? If not now, when? And if even Canada cannot say no to economic bullying, what hope remains for any middle power in this new global order? That is the decision before us. And history will not wait.